So welcome to the special meeting of January 28th, 2020. There's a need for an executive session this evening under CRS 246402-4B, legal advice. The board will conference with an attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific matters. May I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hurtado? Here. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Aye. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Lovato? Aye. Mrs. Quintana? Will you just refuse it? Oh.
What?
You're supposed to say it.
Good evening. Welcome to the special meeting again on Tuesday, January 28th. I'll bring this meeting to order at 5:27. Monica, may I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Hurtado? Here. Mrs. Lewis?
Here.
Ms. Lovato? Here.
And Ms. Quintana is excused. She's still recovering from knee surgery. So I would like a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Seconded.
Roll call, Monica, please.
Mrs. Hurtado?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Lovato? Aye.
At this time, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Rangel for his reports.
Great. This time I'd like to have Shea Martinez, our Chief Financial Officer and Budget Director, to have her come up and present on the supplemental budget.
Or did you get extra copies of anybody? This is a part of the presentation, but it's here. Good evening, members of the board, board president, and Superintendent Rangel. Tonight, I'd like to share with you the supplemental budget process, as well as explain the need for the board to appropriate an amended or a supplemental budget. So the first question is, when a board adopts a budget in the spring, it is based on several assumptions, and I'm going to go through the assumptions that usually guide the budget in the spring. Projected pupil count increase or decrease, projected assessed valuation from the county, proposed per pupil funding amount from the School Finance Act, projected grant awards, an ending fund balance estimation, and vacant positions are usually assumed as an average FTE. So the supplemental is essentially a true-up of those assumptions. The ending fund balance is adjusted to reflect audited ending fund balances. Pupil count is based on the final October count that was completed in October. We usually have the certified amount in November or early December. State equalization and property tax contributions are adjusted, and we get the final assessed valuation from the county in late November, early December. The per pupil funding amount is adjusted and finalized. Salaries are adjusted to actual, so when we actually get different people in the same positions, we use their actual salary and benefits instead of the average teacher salary and benefits. And a lot of grant awards are final and have been allocated. Gotta remember one quick. Here's a chart that shows the fund balance only portion of the budget to start with. So in the first column, it tells you, breaks down the type of fund balance. In the second column is the amount that was adopted in June of 2019 and what we're recommending you approve tonight for supplemental 1920. These also are estimations right now. When we have an actual ending fund balance, these will probably be adjusted slightly or even more profoundly if, hopefully not profoundly, but they are based on actuals in the audit. So some of the things that we reallocated in the fund balance. The fund balance ended up $1.6 million higher than projected. So in the adopted budget, you'll see that the ending fund balance was estimated at $15 million. We'll see it on the next slide that the actual audited beginning fund balance, the actual ending fund balance was adjusted and flowed through the balances to make the 16.7 amount that you see here. So some of the changes, we reclassified $4 million of the risk reserve and we moved it to unassigned fund balance. The reason we had the $4 million in that restricted fund balance is because we were anticipating a settlement for a large case. We've since settled that particular case, so we can move the fund balance into a category that is not restricted to a specific item. The other one we added per the auditor suggestion was that the estimated MGT payment for the subsequent year be reserved in the fund balance amount. And then of course the unassigned increased because the actual fund balance increased, and moving the risk amount into there, moving the MGT amount out of there, our net result was 16.7. So this is kind of a high-level estimation. We're going to go into more details in the next few slides. You'll see here we've outlined the adopted June 19 budget again. We're talking about beginning fund balance, estimated revenues, estimated expenditures, and what the estimated fund balance was. And then this bottom part, the designated revenues, is what we just went over in the previous slide. So here's a little more detail of the breakdown. Since the adopted budget is based on the projections, is based on the beginning fund balance projection, which is based on formulaic estimation of actual expenditures. We start that process right about now for the next school year. And by the time we have the budget complete and ready to bring to the board for proposed, we have an actual amount of beginning fund balance that we've settled on. It still is an estimation. So as everything fleshed out and is audited, hopefully we did a pretty good job of estimating it, but things can also change in the audit process. The supplemental trues up the projection with actual audit amounts. The difference in this year's projection from the adopted to the supplemental was 1.78 million. And you will see that in this first, and I'm going in the columns across. So you see that that was a difference of 1.788241. And then the detail behind it is just adjusting the audited figures. The estimates for revenue used in the adopted budget are based on the School Finance Act projections, estimated pupil count, estimated categorical allocations. The supplemental is also still an estimate, but it's adjusted based on actual pupil count and actual per pupil revenue amounts. that were finalized in the School Finance Act. So here, under the revenues, initially were $68.9 million. The supplemental is $69.5 million. The variance being $582,000. So right here, you would think we increased our revenues by $582,000. So the second handout I gave you, I don't want to go in too much detail about the para adjustment, but after our audit was in the process of being finalized and we're auditing last year, CDE was given a direction by the para auditors that we needed to book the $1.1 million, which was our proportionate share of the direct payment they made to para. And that booking was essentially revenue in of 1.1 and expenditure out of 1.1, just so we were properly recording that transaction. And that was, the expenditure was recognized in the benefit accounts, and the revenue was recognized as a state, basically pass-through revenue. And I certainly can provide more explanation from that, but it was given, we were given the direction to book it after our budgets were already adopted. So in actuality, our revenues were $611,000 less than projected, and that was the 101 student FTE that came in below anticipated people count. So on expenditures, the adopted budget was $72 million and some change. In the supplemental, it was $72.7 million, indicating an increase of $712,000. Again, the expenditure for the para was $1.1 million, so we actually did not increase expenditures $712. If you look at it from the perspective of the adopted budget, it was $481,000 less in expenditures. The other thing to look at is in the supplemental, we did add $1.1 million for curriculum purchases that MGT and our staff felt was necessary this year to get started on our work. So it was either going to come from fund balance next year or this year and not roll in fund balance. So all in all, it was a subtraction of expenditures by 1.5. I feel like I'm doing all these nets to try to explain it, but I certainly, if you have more specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you. The ending fund balance, we see it was projected as $15 million. The supplemental, it ended up being $16.7 million, which was a variance of $1.6 million. So that actually had no effect with the para, so that one is actually true up. So in the adopted budget, we had projected we were going to spend down $3,094,000 of our fund balance. The supplemental, we are projecting $3.2 million spend down, which is only a difference of $130,000. However, it's important to note that our fund balance ended up higher, and we also included the curriculum purchase in that. So we still are working with about the same bylaw as we had originally projected. So here's the same summary for all of the additional funds. There were very, very small adjustments to these funds, most of them having no adjustment. We made a slight adjustment to the risk management sub-fund of $50,000. I put a contingency amount in there for unforeseen costs because it was really budgeted quite slim. So in the special revenue funds, the athletic fund was adjusted for actual salaries. and the fee-supported fund was adjusted for the audited fund balance. In debt service funds, tiny little adjustment to our certificate of participation debt service. Needed to budget the interest, which was $2,500. And then capital reserve had a little bit more of a change. There was actually no increase in expenditures. This was due to an accounting entry that we must make when we have a capital lease. So we had a yellow and white fleet buses lease where the entire principal amount, which was, I believe, a little over $400,000, needs to be booked as a revenue. The entire amount needs to also be booked as a lease expenditure. It's an in-out. And then the actual expense going forward for the payments and interest is booked as an annual entry for that amount. So we had to appropriate both the expenditures and the revenues for that. In the building fund, in the adopted budget, we had $33.2 million. In the proposed amendment, we have $32.9, difference of $246,000. The audited fund balance came in lower, and the best revenue came in higher, and this was the net effect. So all in all, the changes, when you consider all of the funds, $1.1 million, and the majority of that is the para lease, or the para lease, the para adjustment. So that is I don't know what that is. Oh, did you put the calendar in there? Sorry, I didn't know that. So the board member, one of the board members requested a budget calendar that showed the statute, when things are actually due by statute. So I went another step and kind of outlined when we normally address certain issues of the budget. Other than the statute, we can change if the board wants information sooner or more information at different times. That's absolutely fine. There's only a few dates, like the supplemental budget being January 31st. The budget has to be to the board no later than June 1st, the actual draft budget. We have to post a notification to the community 10 days before our public budget presentation. And then the final budget has to be adopted by June 30th. So, can I answer any questions at this point?
I just had one question. Thank you for the calendar.
Sure.
What programs fall in the fee-supported?
Eddie, can you help us answer that question?
Good evening. I'll shoot from the hip a bit, try to name them. We support, it's going to have the print shop.
Eddie, can you use the microphone?
It's going to have the print shop. It's going to have before and after programs. It's going to have it's going to have adult ed. I guess would be one of the big ones that used to have a fee that Monaco did, but that stopped too. I think that's the big ones.
It's not a very large fund.
I guess Lester Arnold Daycare would be the other one that's in there.
Other questions?
I have a quick question. With the MGT payment, we already had the current year budgeted, so this is in addition to that for next year?
The auditors recommended that we reserve next year's payment in the fund balance.
Okay.
So it will again also be budgeted next year, and then the reserve will then move to the next year, which there is a big step down of that fee, so.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Great, thank you for putting all this together.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Next, Leo. I'm going to have Leo Rodriguez, our Director of Operations, come up and introduce our team from Cooperative Strategies, Friends of Pittman, and our other members that are working on the new Alsup Elementary School.
Members of the board, it's a pleasure for me to represent or present tonight the team that's been working on the new Alsup design for the past, year and a half, right? All with the input from design groups, including teachers, faculty members, I believe the community as well on 3 separate occasions. So representing the team is the architects, RB+B, David Kress, Cooperative Strategies, Kevin Huber and Stephen Mumblow, and from Franson Pittman, Ben Coleman, Alan Anderson, Jed Risser. I don't know why I'm going on like there's somebody else here, but this is the team here. Pardon me?
Harry joined the team.
There you go. It's that guy right there. A lot of work has gone into this to date. We are ready to begin breaking ground at the end of next month. So we need to talk about the photo op, the opportunity to take a picture with kids and shovels for the opening ceremony. That's to be scheduled. But here you're going to get a lot of information about how we've gotten here, but more specifically about the details that are going into the construction, where the money is going. I'm proud to tell you that we're under budget, and it's a great way to start. So today's presentation is what's known as the guaranteed maximum price, which is where we begin the conversation. So with no further ado, unless there are any questions for me, I'd like to begin with that presentation. Okay. You guys want to join me or? Okay.
I guess I'll start. Kevin Huber, Cooperative Strategies. Nice to finally meet all of you guys. We've been helping you guys out for a year and a half. Just a little background, you were awarded a $33.9 million BEST grant, as you know, for Alsup. Tonight we are looking at the guaranteed maximum price. So we've hired RBB to do the design, and then we hired Franson Pittman to be our contractor for this project. And their hard cost budget was $27.3 million, as you saw in here. The soft cost budget is the remaining budget that is for furniture, technology, architect fees, all that good stuff. So with that, I'm going to let them dive into the process. If you have any questions during this, please feel free to ask, or we can wait till the end to ask those as well.
Just outline the concept of guaranteed maximum price. Something that's not here.
Yeah, we've got a slide.
Yeah.
All right.
David, I think this is,
Okay, go.
We do have a little version.
Very good, yeah, just give an overview. We'll go over the schedule, the design process recap, project overview, budget overview, and then there'll be the question for the approval of the GMP, and then we'll tell you a bit about next steps. So here's the schedule that we've been following. As Leo mentioned, we've been working with you for a little over a year. To date, there have been several design advisory group meetings, and those have primarily been the existing Alsup staff, but community member, a few others have joined in that. And then obviously your representative and the contractor working alongside us the entire way. So we've also had some meetings with your architectural review committee periodically, just to keep the district on board with what we've been doing and where the project's going. So we're at the point, I think I'm supposed to click this and the line turns red, but it did not. So the dark black line that you see there is where we're at today. We've completed the design. Franson Pittman has done their job to put a price to the work that we've designed, and we're about to launch that construction phase. So I'll give you just a little bit of kind of what went on here. You can see the collaborative design effort that we went through. We gathered information to begin with and then proposed several design options and then slowly narrowed those down to one that kind of rose to the surface, and then have been developing that design ever since. It was a lot of fun, I have to say. 6 ARC meetings, 6 design advisory group meetings, many focus group meetings. That's where we really get into the details of what do you want this cabinet to do, what do you want the technology to do in the building, things like that. 3 community open houses, and then we completed the construction documents, and they are submitted for permit as we speak. I'll give you just a little overview of what we ended up with here. This is on the old Adams City High School site. Up and to the right, I think, is where the existing theater still stands, and then down and to the right, the old cafeteria, I believe, is there. And then you have a facility off to the left. Visitor staff parking is out in front of the building along with a long parent drop-off loop. And then if you kind of wrap around the corner, we have a special parking lot for the pre-K that's right outside the preschool wing there. Drive goes around the back to the kitchen where we have kind of a community functions running vertically with the gymnasium, media center, cafeteria, things like that. And then the classrooms are off to the right. So looking at the plan, the front door there is kind of right in the middle. The administration is just to the right of that, and then a kindergarten wing moves off to the right along the bottom of the page, and then there are identical learning community wings for 1st and 2nd grade right above those. As I mentioned, ECE is off to the left, and then cafeteria, gymnasium, special functions go up vertically. And then on the upper floor, I'm not sure why this slide is here. Okay, just specialty things. Up on the upper floor, we have the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade classroom pods. And those look down into the media center. Little view of what the project will look like approaching the front door. The media center has the stair up to the upper level. Cafeteria, community space. This is kind of the entrance to one of the learning communities. There are 4 that are essentially identical. The little small group room in the middle. And that is the basic overview of the plan. Do you have any questions regarding the floor plan or anything about it? Very good.
So just as David kind of walked you through their process for the design, I wanted to just walk everybody through the history of what we've been doing as the general contractor during the design process. You can see that we have had some pricing milestones throughout the design process, and really the purpose of that is just to make sure that as design's developing, the costs are also aligning with what the owner's budget is with that. So you can see our first pricing workshop that we hosted was back in April. So almost a year ago, we put together our first workshop of costs for that, and you can see we were about $1,300,000 at that point over the budget. So from that point on, we've worked together as a team to bring value into the project. We substituted out some different materials to help get things in line with what the owner's budget was. So our next pricing milestone that we put together was a DD cost estimate. That was back in August of last year. And you can see again that the costs are all moving down towards our goal of 27.3. So I want to back up here just a little bit. We jumped over the purpose of the GMP part of it from back here at the beginning. I just wanted to talk about that real quick, just so everybody understands what we're doing tonight here. So the guaranteed maximum price, so this is, as we have up here, where the contractor is compensated for actual costs incurred plus a fixed fee subject to a ceiling price. The contractor is responsible for cost overruns unless the GMP has increased via formal change order as a result of additional scope from the school district. So, getting back to where we're at, so we sent out the final construction documents for bidding to various subcontractors in this area, and as a result of that, we had really good interest in your project. We had really good competitive bid results with that. So as you can see, our GMP that we're presenting for approval is 206,000 roughly under the owner's budget. The last thing I want to talk about here, as far as the GMP and construction costs go, we have also included some contingency dollars in here to help manage risk as we start off working through the site-related items as we start bringing the building up out of the ground. So we have some contingency dollars. We have 2.5% construction contingency included within our GMP, again, to help mitigate risk items as we bring the building up out of the ground. We've also highlighted some major allowances that we've included in this. We have a vapor mitigation system that will go underneath the building slab. We also have a weather protection allowance and an allowance for radio amplification, which involves first responder teams. Does anybody have any questions with any of that? Okay.
So, I guess a few other things to point out. This project was approved by the BEST board, Capital Construction Assistance Board, and the district has already entered into an agreement with them. This is kind of formality we do at every phase. You know, we hired Franson Pittman, told them what the budget was gonna be, and then now they've come in and, you know, come in under budget, which is great. We're also holding owner's contingency for anything that comes up or additional things we want to put in the building as we move through it and mitigate risk. So with that, just broke your pointer. Sorry. Just want to know if you guys have any questions. The last few things, you know, we're looking to start breaking ground in late February. We proposed a date of maybe February 28th to do the groundbreaking ceremony. We can do those a variety of ways. Sometimes we do them during the day while the kids are in school. Maybe have the kids walk down or bus them down. Have you guys come out there. We invite the state, the BEST program, and then they send that out to about 40 different people, state representatives and just people who have an interest in the BEST program. Sometimes they speak. So we can have a nice long ceremony. We usually like to run them about an hour. It's just exciting to get the kids out there and get them excited about the project. So just something to think about. I'd like to get that scheduled soon. So. And then tonight, just, yeah, if you have any questions, please let us know. Just kind of want your blessing to move forward and get this new school going. So.
I have a couple of questions. You guys, okay. I had been following this because I'm very excited about the build. I think a few board meetings ago, you guys had talked about the existing structures there, the old cafeteria and the theater. Are you leaving those as is, or did you look into that at all?
Yeah, so when you guys wrote the first grant, you actually wrote two, one for Alsup and one for Adams City. And if you remember the site, that site that we have the new elementary school on is designated for the elementary. The other two buildings were part of the middle school grant, and the funding to abate and demolish those buildings was part of the middle school grant and not the elementary school. So at this time, we don't have the funds to do that. If we ever do the middle school grant in the future, we'll make sure to include those funds to demo those as well. But right now, we kind of had to stay on the other corner of the site. So.
My other question is, as far as your neighborhood updates, have you guys had positive feedback about, obviously I'm sure everybody's excited for this to start, but the traffic, and then I know the RTD construction is going to start around the same time. Just wondering if you had any feedback from what you've heard.
We've heard nothing negative from the community, say that. Additional information?
Yeah, well, in terms of the traffic, yes, there are plans for 3 intersections, essentially to the north of the Alsup area, I believe are part of the future plans for the old Greyhound dog track to handle whatever traffic will go into that. How that impacts our project, I'm not exactly sure yet. I think that's been in the plans for some time now. That development has been underway for like 2 years, and it's just about to go vertical, a small 3.03 acre area with 30 single-family homes with detached garages will be going across the street. What is that, 64th Avenue, from that church, Impacto del Fe, or de Fe. And that begins, I believe, as early as April. So there's going to be a lot of activity here coming up here. But there is one, in reference to the road, that's what, 68th Street, 68th Avenue, crossing right in front of the old high school and where our new school will have its parking lot. But I don't know if we've had any changes to the traffic there whatsoever. So I think so far it's smooth sailing.
Anything else?
Thank you, thank you. It's very exciting.
The next presentation. The next presentation, our Director of Teaching and Learning, Matt Schwartz, is going to come up and talk about the work on the calendar and the recommendation of the calendar committee. One thing I will say about calendars, if you put 200 people in a room, there'd be 200 opinions about the calendar. But I wanted to walk through the recommendations from the committee and then see what questions you might have.
Thank you. President Lewis and Acting Superintendent Rangel and members of the board, it's my privilege to present our work from our calendar recommendation group. I do have a couple of members with me in the audience that were able to make it. Will you please wave? There you go. So I've asked them if there are questions, they may want to raise their hand and answer some of these along the way, because we had a very collaborative group and did some unprecedented work, quite frankly, for all sure. Yeah, would you like to come up here to the front, please? Jessica, Maria?
Good evening.
The front row. So our group consisted of different members throughout Adams 14. We had 2 members from our classified group. We had 2 members from DAC that also represented parents. We had an elementary teacher, Jessica Mintz, who's with us here tonight. Luciana, come on up. You don't get to shy away from this. We had a middle school teacher, a high school teacher, and Luciana Stokely, who is our principal of preschool at this time. So a great mix of people and many fantastic perspectives that they were able to share through our work. So we started off kind of alluding to what Superintendent Rangel was speaking to up front. I start off our presentation with, there is no perfect calendar. And so you can read through some of these statements and, I'm just going to pick a few of them. Memorial Day, I don't want to have to come back after Memorial Day weekend. Thanksgiving week, we should have the whole week off because my kids are off this week and I don't have daycare. Or Veterans Day, why do we have to take this day? Nobody else does. And I read through each of these through our presentation, and I revisit this every presentation while our group reconvenes. It regrounds us in the work and what exactly we are here to do, which is create a calendar for students. I will also say that I have said every one of those things that you see listed up there. Whether I've been a teacher, assistant principal, principal. Now that I'm a district level administrator, I just tell everyone that I work every day, so I'm good with that. The next slide references our Memorandum of Understanding E. This is in our CTA agreement, and I'm going to point out some things as I pointed out with our group this year. You'll see some language in here that we did a great job with that first bullet, getting some representation through some different groups in our district. The second bullet we didn't do. We'll be notified by May 31st. The next bullet we didn't do on a monthly basis, and I'll speak to that here in a minute. We are here to present a draft calendar in January like we need to do per board policy and the language in this in the CTA agreement. But going back to, and I spoke to our group about this, and I will own this, through our transition in our district, I did not start the work on the calendar with the uncertainty of our EMO in the process. So that's why, part of the reason why I did not start this work back in May. We did convene our group in early October, but I did share with them up front, that is the language in the MOU. We do intend to follow that in the future. One, this is another piece from the CTA agreement. And this, if you read through this language, it speaks to a couple of things that have to occur the first 5 days that teachers report to work. And out of those 5 days, 1.5 of those are teacher-directed time. In fact, the very first day the teachers report back is a teacher workday, and that's specified in our teacher agreement. The other half day comes from the half day left from the Adams 14 rally. The last part of this speaks to principals having 2 days of principal directed time. This is so as you're a principal and you're welcoming your teachers, your staff back to your school, you're able to do the necessary work to create a successful start for your teachers and staff and community at your school. I always reference these pieces because they are some of the parameters in which we work to develop the calendar. This next slide references our process. So I always start with the superintendent. I move on to our instructional team to determine district level professional development needs. I met with each of our principals to determine their needs. I take that information and try and develop some trends or some needs that our principals have at their schools. The next part is I enlist some of the members of our committee are here. I really wanted to have representation from elementary, middle, and high school so I could get that perspective into the room. We met 3 different times through October and early November. Part of this is to allow time so we can present to DAC in December, which is what we did. Presented to the exec team our work to collect any feedback. Again, went to DAC, and then here we are today. So our next slide here are the guiding principles in which we that guide our work each and every time we meet. So one of the things that we established early on are breaks, and we really start with the winter break, and we count days in each direction. There are 188 teacher work days in our agreement, and we take that midpoint and we count 94 this direction and 94 backwards the other direction to see where we land. And then we start to have some discussions about where spring break might fall and where fall break might fall, or if we even have a fall break. We put in our holidays. These are outlined in board policy, which holidays we take off in our district. Balanced quarters. This is necessary for instruction. And I will say one of the driving forces behind this, Mr. Sandos, can you wave to me over there? There he is. So Mr. Sandos has to have balanced quarters for the alternative high school, and it's a need that I always strive to meet, and I think we can do that in our work. It takes a lot of brainstorming with the group, but we do always work with that in mind. Going back to our CTA agreement, 188 work days. Student contact days can be no more than 176. So you'll see less than 177 in the presentation. And then the first 5 days are outlined in the contract, and then compensation days. And compensation days fall after you stay late for conferences. District and school-based professional development. So we have that guiding principle. Teacher work days at the end of each semester and quarter. We have different levels with different needs, and so that is a need that we have in our schools. And maximizing our student contact days. We're always looking to try and keep it somewhere close to the 176. One last thing, assessment always needs 3 weeks in May. That is to get through end of year STAR testing, SAT testing, and CMAS. We're finished. Yeah. Our next slide, this is just a quick snapshot. This is a data request from our group. They had questions around early release days and what the attendance looks like. So at that point in time, we had that snapshot. There was a belief that we had a high absentee rate going on during early release days. And just through this snapshot, we realized it wasn't too far off than our normal day. So that the decisions for the group after we go through all of that, we have to put in a winter break, Thanksgiving week. Is it a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or is it going to be an entire week? Does it fall in October? Spring break, where does that go? Teacher work days. How do we even out and balance quarters? Do we have a fall break? Parent-teacher conferences, where do those belong? And with that said, where do compensation days belong? Typically within 2 weeks of conferences. District professional development days, we have 4. And does school end before or after Memorial Day, which certainly sparks a discussion in the group. Some of our calendar highlights that we were able to accomplish with the drafts that you have in front of you. Early release days to allow for consistent professional development time for teachers and principals. District professional learning days are quarterly throughout the school year. Principal time at the beginning of the school year to ensure a successful start for students. Conferences are set before breaks. This was a change that our group made from this current year's calendar. Collaborative process. I could never do the work without these voices in the room. So I appreciate all of you. Balanced quarters for instruction. Identified orientation days for 6th and 9th graders to ensure a successful start. Identified graduation dates for Adams City High School and Lester Arnold. Identified continuation dates for Adams City Middle School and Kearney Middle School, and identified conferences for elementary and secondary. And then my last slide is going back to our process. And we do hold tight to that process because as Superintendent Rangel mentioned, if I invited 1,000 people in the room, I'd have 1,000 calendars. So we're really good at keeping tight to our process. When the opinions come in, I ask that our group take those opinions from their colleagues and bring them into the room that way, instead of just taking those opinions from whoever as I walk around from school to school. My last slide is, do you have any questions?
I have questions.
Okay.
Can you, yes. Since you said that you started late in the year, do you feel like you guys have had enough time to allow for adequate feedback and to collect data to support some of the decisions?
Do you guys want to answer that, or would you like me to? Our group went through lots of discussion, and we tended to discuss the same items at a couple of our meetings, and they lasted for about an hour, each of the discussions. They really were around fall break. They went back to, I want to say, help me out. We talked a lot about fall break, half days, the rally, do we have to have it?
There was a lot of discussion about the end date as well, because it fell on such an odd day and how so there was a lot of discussion about the end date because it does seem odd, right? And it really just ended up that way due to the trying to balance out the quarters for our schools like Lester Arnold and just for secondary, grading purposes. And that's kind of how it ended up where it was. I did get some feedback after a draft was sent through the union, and all of the feedback did pertain to items that had been addressed, that we had discussed, and that's kind of where we ended up. So there was nothing that I had gotten as far as feedback goes that was an item that we hadn't thought of or hadn't discussed and hadn't pondered. And so that's kind of why it is where it is.
I had another question about early release days.
Yes.
Given that they're not they're not half days, are early release days effective for PD?
I think that currently I would say yes. I didn't have feedback necessarily from anybody in particular that said that it wasn't. We do have, it is necessary for us to, and I will speak more from the elementary side of this, knowing that it is a struggle for our principals to have time with their elementary teachers. And these early release days really offer that avenue different trainings, different professional developments. I actually had the opportunity last Friday. We had a couple of principals that had some things that they had to be out for. So I had the opportunity to cover the principal over at DuPont. And it was an early release day. And I have to say I was extremely impressed by the staff at DuPont, for one, but two, I got to watch some of the professional learning going on from the early release day, which was a teacher-driven, unstructured student talk, which is certainly a need in our district. It was a fantastic, it was an awesome sight to see teachers leading that PD for other teachers, instead of here's the principal standing in front of everyone again. So that's what I got to see.
I have a couple of questions as well. Well, first, thank you guys for all this work. I know it takes a lot of time and a lot of preparation. I'm wondering if you included working with the athletic director in CHASA to work around, I know there are some requirements and some events that tie around this, and it makes it a little difficult to get the kids where they need to get.
I will say I did not work with our athletic director. I'm, certainly something I can share with him and get some additional feedback from him. I just, at this point in time, want to respect and honor the work of the group and the representation. I know we had Mr. Tinsman from the high school in that room, and he's been here for a while at Adams City High School, so he didn't offer a perspective to us regarding that. Just conference nights, that is, and they need to have a desire to have those on Monday and Tuesday, I think, for our secondary. And that parents would better be able to attend conferences.
Did the start and end times change at all for any of the school levels, or did you carry those over from the previous?
Not our work to do that. We just designed the student calendar, but as far as I know, our start and stop times will remain the same.
And then, did you guys refer, I know you referred back to the Classroom Teachers Association agreements. Did you compare the statute as well as to like contact hours?
Good question. We currently have Yvonne Helke, who actually goes through our calendar for me to ensure that we have the proper number of contact hours. I can share that we meet that requirement, and we followed really the model of the current calendar that we have today. So we didn't change anything as far as the number of vacation days or teacher work days or any of that in our work. So we do have a little bit of a cushion, and it allows us to have that snow day when it hits us, or if there's an emergency closure for any reason. So there is a little bit of space in there. You bet.
And my last question, I truly appreciate how you get a different opinion from everybody you ask. What were the discussions and what are your thinkings about obtaining that community feedback or the student feedback, parent feedback to rolling this out? Like to say, okay, this is what we've come up with. What are your thoughts?
To gather that just from my understanding, gather feedback from students and other parents.
Teachers,
we did not go that far. I really relied on the voices that I had in the room, and I know that the voices that I actually do have carried many perspectives, parent and grandparent perspectives, teacher perspectives, and I really relied on that for our process. I don't know if Maria wants to add a little bit, because I know she's out and about everywhere, so.
So I can speak a little to that. I think the initial comment that was made by Mr. Rangel and Mr. Schwartz is that if you put it out there, you're going to get so many perspectives as to why not and why you should do certain things that pretty soon you're not going to have really a solid calendar. So it happened to us in just a small group we had. We were all over the place at first going, as a parent, I'm like, babysitting, childcare, I do work and all of these things that we're taking into consideration. And then you had to consider what CTE said. And so there's certain things that you can't really move and you have no control over. And I think that it took us a little bit to actually grasp that and say, okay, so this is what we have, this is what we can do, and it's very limited to what you can do. But I see what you're saying of putting it out there. I know that one of the reasons it's brought to DAC is so that we have that opportunity for people to see it and give that feedback. And for me, I'd love to have a student perspective on this committee someday, and just like I had requested for DAC to have student representation, because they're the main voices, they're our main customer, we need to have their perspective as well. But overall, these 2 years that I've been on this committee, we've gone around and around the first meeting trying to figure all of that out, and Matt always brings the same presentation and says, this is what it is, and we're like, okay, how can we work with that and kind of plug in the holes, and a lot of math. Never thought I'd use a lot of math, but we have to figure it out. And so it does take us a little bit of time, but I think this group worked diligently to make sure that all the perspectives were heard, that were being heard, and that all the ideas that were being brought to the table were actually discussed, if that helps.
The one thing I will say is that in my former district, when we were having discussions about a calendar on whether to have a 4-day week or a 5-day week, it required a tremendous amount of discussion with parents in the community. And so there are times when that is absolutely should happen. Any other questions? We'll be bringing this back in February.
Can you use the microphone, please?
We will be bringing this back to the board at our February meeting, and thank you very much for your time, and thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Having served on the calendar committee in the past, I know what a tough job that is. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're running a little bit late here, but we are going to now go into our business items. Our first business item is resolution number 20001. Can I get a motion to approve item 1.1? And it's the authorization to use a portion of beginning fund balance as authorized by Colorado statutes.
I'll motion to approve item 1.1.
Thank you.
And I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
No, just thank you, Shay and Eddie, for putting together all the background information. It was very helpful.
Thank you. Monica, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hurtado?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Lovato?
Aye.
So our next resolution is the appropriation resolution. Can I get a motion to approve resolution 1.2?
I'll motion to approve 1.2.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hurtado?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Lovato?
Aye.
Our next board action is 2.1, Annex Number 2 to External Management Contract with Adams 14 Succeed LLC, MGT. Can I get a motion to approve board action 2.1?
I'll motion to approve 2.1.
I second.
Is there any discussion?
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for benefit of the public to understand what this Annex Number 2 is, when the district entered into the management contract with Adams 14 Schools Succeed, a major component of that was that a substantial portion of MGT's fee would not be guaranteed. That is, they could only earn that portion of the fee based on achievement of a number of performance incentives in the school district. And so at the time that the contract was written, not all of the incentives were set in stone, so to speak, in the contract. There were a few that, for a variety of reasons, just weren't resolved at the time the contract was signed. And so now that MGT has been in the district and that the new members of the board have come on, the time's appropriate to close that out and resolve those issues. So the incentives that are being resolved by this Annex Number 2, and it's, as the board knows, less than a one-page document, is that the STAR assessment that the district has used for a number of years is going to determine, for reading and math, that's going to determine one of the categories of performance incentives. And then the other would be attendance, and that measure wasn't set. But that's going to be a percentage of students that an improvement on a prior semester basis of the percentage of students who achieve 90% or above attendance. So that's all that Annex Number 2 does.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No. Monica, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hurtado?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Lovato?
Aye.
And our last item is Superintendent Recommendation 3.1, approval of office furniture donation to Adams 14 from Horn Construction Company. May I have a motion on 3.1?
I'll motion to approve 3.1.
May I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
My question is, do we know what we're going to use this for or where it's going to go? Or
We had to,
You'll have to go up to the mic.
sorry, Shay.
So this is not set in stone, but I had a discussion with Leo since we're going to be moving offices, and I know that he utilizes a stand-up desk, and there was another desk in his office that we gave to Rose Hill Library because there's got water damage, so it was so we didn't have to go and purchase another one. So when I told him I didn't have a desk, all of a sudden, he found a free one. He found a free one. Actually, there was more than one. Isn't there? Sure. I'll let you know.
So there are like 8 pieces of furniture, 2 of the same style, 3 of another style, and all very nice. We estimate somewhere around $13,000 worth of furniture, all coming from Horn Construction, which has been a family-owned business here in Commerce City since the early 80s. And the current owner took over the business around 1985 and has come to the point where it's time for him to sell the business. And the reason why the timing of the short notice is that we just got a phone call Thursday afternoon saying, hey, we've got this opportunity. And they close on the sale tomorrow. So we just need to go over there and pick it up at least by Thursday and Friday. And it'll all come over to, well, the majority of the furniture, I believe, will be going to the ESS, the central office, where it's easiest to allocate the furniture.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Then I second that motion. I would have anyway, I was just curious.
I just want to thank, I don't know if they're watching here, but I just want to thank Horn Construction for their successful business and their contribution to the city of Commerce City, and of course this awesome donation.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Monica, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hurtado?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Lovato?
Aye.
So in interest of time, is it all right if my board colleagues if we skip communications tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Monica, roll call?
Mrs. Hurtado,
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Lovato.
Aye.
So it's adjournment is 6:36. Thank you so much.